In this video, we'll look at some other potential issues when conducting surveys. In a previous section, we already looked at how conducting a convenience sample could lead to bias. Here are some other things that could go wrong when conducting a survey. First, you want to watch out for undercoverage. This happens when the method of collecting data somehow makes it that certain populations are not able to be part of the sample. Non-response means that there are some people that, even though they're chosen for the sample, they do not participate. Response bias could be lots of things, but in general, it's something about the way the question is asked or the way that the survey is conducted that leads respondents to give a certain answer more often than they usually would. That would include wording of the question. So if you're trying to lead them into choosing a certain answer, that would be an example of a leading question or the wording of the question being biased. Let's look at a few examples of each of these. In the first example, we have the mayor of Springfield is interested in finding out the average age of people in the city. He obtains a list of all the landline telephones in the city and then contacts a simple random sample of 300 people. He uses the data from the sample to estimate the average age of all the people in the city. What could be wrong with this? And do you think that he'll get an overestimate or an underestimate of the true average age of the people in Springfield? So think about this for a moment and think about what types of people have landlines. Often, it's older people, where younger people will only have a cell phone. So that means that we're going to probably end up overestimating the true age because our sample will include mostly older people. That is called undercoverage. Because younger people are less likely to be in the sample just because of the fact that they're less likely to have a landline phone. Here's another example. The administration at a school wants to know the proportion of students that did all of their homework last night. They selected a simple random sample of 100 students and sent an email to each of them asking if they did all of their homework last night. Of the 40 responses, 36 of the students said that they did all of their homework last night, about 90%. What's wrong with this survey? Do you think that the administration will get an overestimate or an underestimate of the true proportion of students that actually did their homework? So there's two things wrong with this survey. The first is that only 40 out of the 100 people responded to the survey. That part is non-response bias because so many people chose not to respond. They ignored the email. The other issue is that this is your school administration asking this question, which means it's your principal asking you if you did your homework last night. That could mean that you might be feeling pressured to say that you did, whether or not that's true. So maybe you'll lie when you take the survey. This is an example of response bias. This is likely to give us an overestimate of how many people did their homework. So the people that didn't do their homework, either they chose not to respond at all, which is why we got such a low response rate, or maybe they even were willing to lie about the amount of their homework that they did. Here's one more example. In this example, we have a Boy Scout who wants to know the proportion of the people in his neighborhood who support Boy Scouts. So he puts on his uniform and he goes out and he samples 30 random homes. What could be wrong with this survey? So there's the main thing here that he puts on his uniform. So when he's asking the question, the person responding might feel pressure to say that they do support scouting, whether that's true or not. So this is another type of response bias, where the characteristic of the questioner has an impact on the response. Again, this is likely to overestimate the true proportion of people that support the Boy Scouts. Now, one more example that I didn't type up here, the way that you word the question could also be response bias. So maybe if the way he worded his question was, don't you support the Boy Scouts? Then he's kind of leading them to say that he wants them to agree with him in their support. So that's one more example of response bias.